The dog is an entity, an icon of RE4 and my channel by extension. Admittedly, I have been voluntarily dismissing this one until the right time in place of other mysteries or unrelated Resident Evil content, but now we can finally tackle one of the most notorious mysteries I've yet to cover. It's about time we found out what exactly happened to the dog. We first meet the dog at the very beginning of the game. After escaping our first altercation with the hostile locals, we head onwards. Upon hearing his cries from the first cabin, we follow the trail until we find the first sign of life. Unfortunately, our dear friend has been caught in a bear trap. Although we couldn't save our friends, saving the dog more than makes up for it. Generally, the last time anyone will see him is during the El Gigante boss fight, where he helps distract him from the second half onwards. If either left alone or shot out of the bear trap, the dog won't show up here to help, and for good reason. The mystery presents itself after we kill El Gigante, where the dog is nowhere to be seen, without a word from Leon, nor an animation of the dog running off into the woods. It's as if he vanished into thin air. The mystery surrounding the dog's disappearance has always been creepy to talk about, at least for me. I find the instantaneous nature of this mystery to be unnatural, almost like a dream of some sort. Real enough to be considered normal, yet when you wake up and remember, it's suddenly very disconnected. Where on earth did he go? Well, as always, there's a few theories that I have considered for this mystery, and I'll give what I strongly believe to be the solution at the end after exploring most of these. Unlike my previous videos, I won't be using a criteria when basing the likelihood of each theory, because this isn't that kind of mystery really. Finally, please mention anything that I could have missed, or a theory that you believe to be correct.
Over here, stranger.
In my Crane video, I went into detail regarding the numerous abilities possessed by the merchant. This includes his abilities to teleport, resurrect, and scam Leon of all of his money. Set up right behind the enclosure, nearest to the canal, I came to the conclusion that the merchant probably opened the gate for us after the fight concluded. El Gigante and all of the Ganados are dead by this point, making the merchant the closest verifiable character on this occasion. Close enough in fact that I advocate the probability of him having something to do with the dog's disappearance. A common theory that I love, honestly, is that the merchant took custody of the dog after running off into the woods, perhaps crossing paths on one of the many secret passages to stay one step ahead of Leon. It makes a lot of sense. The merchant is a reserved guy, he lives inside of a cave, he's not particularly young, his grandson is the subject of a manhunt. I definitely see him becoming great friends with the dog amidst these long, dark years by himself. Being unable to climb the fence himself, he could have asked the dog to climb the cliff face in order to save his most valued customer. We can have fun theorizing about the merchant and the dog's relationship all day, but that doesn't really explain why the dog suddenly disappeared. Of course, the merchant could have teleported the dog out of danger without us batting an eye. That's really one of only two theories which explains the overtly supernatural vibe of this mystery. I'll go over things like El Gigante's death scene in another theory, but let's assume for whatever reason that the dog just ran away. He just left in the other direction without Leon or us noticing. This opens a lot of doors as to what exactly happened to him, some more disturbing than others. Unfortunately, the very next enemy we encounter are the Colmilos. First encountered by the church, they present a rather tragic risk to the dog's safety as well as our own. More experienced players will know about the optional lake encounter where they can be seen even earlier. And aside from their terrifying appearance and affectionate personality, very little information is known about these creatures. My theory is that they were bred under Las Plagas in order to dispose of the accumulating dead bodies present in the village. It's no coincidence that those contained inside of the wheelbarrow, a mystery that I've covered previously, are gone after we travel back here at night, either by ourselves or with Ashley, a fact that I didn't know about until very recently. The dogs most likely got to them. Potentially they could have also been thrown into the lake during this long intermission. I think this is unlikely considering the wheelbarrow itself is still here, meaning they had to be transported one by one. Finally, these bodies are very old and decomposed. I doubt the villagers' frantic attempts to hide evidence after all of this time, especially during a rainstorm. I think that the dogs definitely ate these bodies, and the Las Plagas allows the digestion of rotten meat. When examining the other farm animals for signs of infection, we can see that none of them share the symptoms of Las Plagas. Their eyes remain normal, their actions aren't particularly unorthodox. This is consistent among every animal in the game that I could find, including both the dogs, which is a relief. But wait, we know for a fact that the merchant is infected, yet we can only see his red eyes at night. Well, for some reason we can only notice these symptoms in the dark or under specific lighting, but when examining the dog in the El Gigante fight, which does take place at night, the dog's eyes still remain normal, meaning he's not infected in any way. If he was, he would have turned already, similarly to those seen at the lake, an event preceding this. Thankfully, we can rule out the possibility of the dog turning into a bad dog, which leaves us with only 2 plausible theories left unanswered. Although the dog doesn't become a Colmilos, we still have to contemplate his hopes of survival had he run off by himself, without help from Leon or the merchant. I hate to say it, but as amazing as the dog is, he's quite reckless, he's courageous and he's fearless, willing to narrowly escape being crushed by El Gigante just to save Leon, willing to cry out for help while stuck in a bear trap in an anguished plead for sympathy. The dog definitely deserves more out of life, but a village full of murderers and savage mutations isn't the place for such a kind-hearted soul. Eventually he'll come across the wrong person or step into a bear trap without anyone around to save him. Regardless of this, I also think the dog is very intelligent and could have feasibly escaped the village by himself following the El Gigante fight. This would explain why we don't really encounter him again, at least. It may be a straightforward conclusion, but I like to believe that the dog made it out safe and sound. Someone could have picked him up by the main road, or maybe the merchant took it upon himself to care for him afterwards. A small theory that I've heard on this topic was that the dog was crushed by El Gigante during its death scene. Using traditional methods, we can't really see under El Gigante too well, but with the help of the camera we can determine that the dog isn't rendered into this scene whatsoever. Just to make one thing clear, I don't usually use mods or cheats. I think they defeat the purpose of the mystery and vibe that I'm going for. However, I like to use what's presented by the game as per intention. In this case, however, I made the exception because I can't allow this theory to become more popular. That's just upsetting. It doesn't really matter anyway, you can still distinguish the dog's absence despite any sort of camera manipulation. This is just to showcase it here as concrete evidence. Someone said something funny in the community post that I want to talk about briefly before my final theory. They mentioned the explosion on the island, that the dog could have been killed during it, or was at least on the island at one point in the game. Now, the only way the dog could have reached the island was if he followed us all the way through the village, continued following us through the entire castle, and subsequently hid inside of the boat's engine. I'm not going to attempt to debunk this theory because it's one of the best things I've ever heard in my life. I'm going to be somewhat imaginative here, which is an ongoing habit of mine when relating personal beliefs on a specific mystery and drawing parallels between them. Just like my reasoning for Lewis's body being the sack creature and the dog being the one who stalked us at the start of the game, I have some good reasons for this that I feel best explain the dog's sudden disappearance, as well as their few interactions together. Firstly, the dog isn't in the bear trap from the beginning of the game. We can't hear his call, the path is still blocked by the truck until we proceed into the cabin of which the ambush unfolds. The dog is only audible from this point onwards, as if he was presented for the sole purpose of being saved by Leon. I believe the reason for this was that Leon felt guilty for the officer's presumed deaths. He was the one who initiated searching the village in the first place, and his reaction to the wreckage comes from a place of self-accusation and a deep sorrow.
I'll go and have a look around.
Oh, no.
I can only compare this reaction to that of Ashley's death, where Leon gives up hope and essentially forfeits his life.
Oh, no.
I don't think the dog actually exists at all. I think he's Leon's guardian angel or a ghost, here to test Leon's faith and save him when needed. Does anyone else find it supernatural that the dog literally comes from another game entirely? The name itself is more of a giveaway as to his role in RE4. Why is he the only animal in the game that you can't kill? Why does he disappear instantaneously like a ghost? Why does he jump down from the sky, and how was he supposedly able to survive infection, contrary to every other dog you come across? Resident Evil was never a series afraid of showing violence towards animals, so the argument that RE4 wouldn't allow for the death of this dog, even though you have the option to mow down every chicken, cow and friend that you can find, isn't credible at all. There is actually one more dog that you can encounter, the farm dog. Sharing similar characteristics to our friend minus the injured leg, you can't hurt this one either. Well, I have a theory for this. There's 6 encounters with dogs throughout RE4. 3 of them are with good dogs, 3 of them are with bad dogs. I think these encounters represent the Holy Trinity and the Unholy Trinity, respectively. I don't suppose any of you find it weird that one of these occasions takes place at a church. In summary, some of you may discredit this entirely, and I'm okay with that. I 100% believe that the dog is Leon's guardian angel, an entity manifested from Leon's mind following the deaths of his associates. I think Leon was aware of this, hence his reluctancy to question it any further, but you can tell by the look in his eyes that there's no one he loves more than his most loyal companion, as he jumps down from the sky in a biblical display of altruism.
Like a part of me I can't let go. Let's leave it at that.